delighted to be back on stage and really thrilled to be with someone who I have admired and respected for so long, Gary Kelly, Chairman at Southwest Airlines, the Love Airline. And so thank you so much for joining us today, Gary. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Karen. It's always great to be with you. So thanks so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. So let's get straight into hearing from you. I'm going to start off with the sort of the operational ramp up and how things are looking, and you know how things look as you look ahead to the fall and winter schedules.
Well, I'm glad you did. I think it's the most important topic, and I'm sure you all have been hearing about it all day. It was really, a real shock. 2 years ago, in fact, we were here having an event in March a couple of years ago, and then everything sort of came to a halt. So it was very messy going into the pandemic, and unfortunately it's really messy coming out. So there was a forced action in the spring of 2020, and now it's kind of a gradual return to normal life, and we're far from normalized yet. So the airlines are not atypical in that regard. Then you look at the airline industry, and there's just a lot of moving parts, no pun intended. Yeah. So you got a lot of people, you've got airports, you've got a lot of airplanes, you've got weather to contend with, you got to get gas in the tanks, and so it's been more of a struggle in 2021, I will admit to everybody, than I anticipated. So the world's just different, So I think that at least at Southwest, I'll just report on our company. I think our folks have done a really nice job of adjusting to that. We've had to trim our schedules back. Our employment numbers are back where we were pre-pandemic, which is roughly 65,000 people. It takes 65,000 people to fly fewer flights than what we had 2 years ago, which is kind of interesting. But we're in good shape. We've had, especially since the spring, we've had very few cancellations, and probably, I don't know if it's literally in 51 years, record low cancellation rates, but very, very low. So I'm very pleased with that. Our on-time performance is not quite back to our historical averages, but very respectable. And our mission is to get everybody where they want to go that day and not cancel their flight. So we're running a little bit later when you look at DOT, A14 on time, but it's not bad. We have a ways to go, and our company's #1 priority is to get back to that operational excellence. And so we've made great progress this year. We're hiring like crazy. We've hired 10,000 people through the first half of 2022, compared to about 3,500 for the whole year of 2019. So the hiring machine is cranked up, and we're getting good people, and they're doing a very good job, and customers are happy, and so it's all pretty good.
All going in the right direction.
It's definitely going in the right direction.
You mentioned hiring there, and an incredible number of hiring. How's the training going? A lot of those people, it's skilled work, of course. So how's the training going?
Excellent point. So I'll use the word hiring. I'm just talking about that whole onboarding and deployment process. So training overall is in really good shape. Interesting choke point for us has been not pilots, but flight instructors, training the pilots, training them on the Southwest way, if you will. So we've got all that balanced out. So the training machine is up and running, and it is just, you look at all the supply chain issues around the world and in every every industry, and it's just fascinating to me how easy it is to turn things off, and then how hard it is to restart them. So it's kind of like restarting the whole world. So a lot of those restarting pains are behind us, and we still are having our own supply chain issues in terms of getting airplanes delivered. So as you can imagine, and I know you've heard from Boeing today, they have a very complicated supply chain. So we're not getting airplanes as fast as we would like. We don't really need them yet, honestly, because we still don't have the staffing flying ratio at a point where we can grow. But next year we will, and you know, we'll be hopeful to see Boeing getting caught up.
So yeah, so just obviously on the Boeing Max you're talking about here. So how is that going now? That
well, we're getting airplanes.
Yeah.
I believe our original plan for 2022 would have been an all-time record, 114 deliveries. So we were in a great position where we could either had incremental flying and increase the fleet, or retire some of our older Dash 700 equipment, and it would be a net benefit. Better fuel consumption, so the economics would be in favor of that. I'm not sure exactly where we're going to end up with the deliveries this year with Boeing, but it'll be significantly less than the 114. And you know, they're working on getting their monthly rate up. And again, I know you all heard from Dave Calhoun this morning, so I won't try to step on anything that he said there. But we're in the process of working on that. I know that they're working on getting engines. And the engines, as I understand it, are dependent upon fan blades. You know, so what beyond that? I'm sure there's other issues, but it's just going to take a while to get all that back up and running at previous rates.
So as you look to 23 on those deliveries, what would be your hope that you're going to get done?
I'm really not comfortable giving an updated number. So I think whatever we get this year, I would hope that we get something close to that again next year. But Boeing is literally in the midst of reworking their monthly rates. So I don't know. And it makes it really hard for our team to plan.
Yeah. Just also on the operational side, and because it's been raised a lot today at this conference, ATC, air traffic control, modernization and investment and resourcing, it's come up again a lot here. It's something that's been talked about forever. It's not a new issue, and I know that at Southwest you've been making this call for a long time. I would just welcome a comment from you about what's needed there.
No, it's an appropriate question, you know, and we're still making the call. So the modernization need is absolutely there. You know, we're not seeing throughput improving year to year, quite the contrary. And in fairness, you know, the pandemic has thrown everybody off, including the federal government and certainly the FAA. They're terrific to engage with. I think that we both share the same desire for safety first, and I think the evidence very much affirms, you know, that commitment. I think they do a fantastic job. Air traffic controllers work very, very hard. I think, like a lot of companies and industries, I think that their staffing has suffered through the pandemic, and I think they're struggling to recover that. They've got a long hiring cycle, they've got a training cycle, and then they've got a proficiency cycle. I know what it's like with pilots. I suspect that it's much longer even with an air traffic controller. So I think just fundamental staffing is something that they're focused on and a concern. And I think the modernization efforts got thrown off, and it needs to happen. We need to have, you know, aspire to have the most efficient air traffic control system in the world. And for us, you know, it's an ecosystem. Every flight is touched by the federal government. Every customer is touched by the federal government. So TSA remarkably has been doing a phenomenal job, I think, across the system. So there's definitely opportunities there and a lot of work to do.
So let's switch to customer experience. Quite a lot has been going on there at Southwest, and the one thing I'm going to definitely pick out is the non-expiring vouchers. I applaud you for that. Tell me a little bit about that, why Southwest made that move.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Our customers are excited about that. You know, I haven't been CEO since February 1, but I got a lot of customer feedback, and one of the primary complaints I would get is that, you know, I've got this ticket, there's always a reason on why it didn't get used, I need more time to use it, and we love to bend over backwards and try to, you know, take care of our customers. So there was a real desire on our part to meet our customers' needs. We were doing it in a very inefficient way. So that's number one. Number two is we already had all these COVID tickets that had been suspended and put into flight credits, and they were about to expire in September, as in this month. And you know, our team thought about it long and hard and said, well, rather than just extending it, let's just do this. It's very much who we are. And yeah, so I'm really excited about that. I think our customers, more importantly, are excited about it. And, you know, I think it's a good business decision on our part.
And you're also bringing in more the Wi-Fi and seat power. Again, is that because you're seeing, you know, that that's just an expectation now with the passenger?
Well, again, it just starts with, you know, safety first, and we want to be the pro-consumer, competitive, low-fare airline. But at the same time, you know, Herb Kelleher always said we walk this fine line. We want to have low fares, but we also want to have great service. So that's just an element of trying to live up to those visions or those aspirations. So we've allocated a couple of $2 billion of investments towards the customer experience. So we're going to have larger bins installed on the airplanes. They're looking at new seats, again, in-seat power, as well as upgrading our Wi-Fi. I think the Wi-Fi has been underway since the late 2000s, believe it or not. And we all know how fast technology changes. And so, you know, some of that's just gotten out of date. So we want, you know, we want really fast broadband service on the airplane where you can have simultaneous sessions in every seat, ideally. So it's a good time to make that commitment as well.
And then, of course, sustainability. I specifically want to ask you if you could talk a little bit about the Sapphire project. I think that's an interesting one. And again, just, you know, just tell, again, maybe you could sum up the what and why.
Yeah, you bet. So in my new role, I still have a couple of executive duties, and continuing on with the work on sustainability is one of those that I'm involved with. Our CEO still will make, you know, an investment decision, but I'm actively involved in some of these projects. So along with the rest of the industry, we've made carbon net zero commitments, you know, for 2050. We've got interim targets in 2030. SAF is a huge component of our, you know, the audacious goals to achieve reductions in our carbon emissions, along with modernizing the fleet. So getting the MAX deliveries, but, you know, obviously to everybody, is very important to us achieving these goals. But we're on the cusp of completing some studies to assess, you know, just the viability of SAF in relation to these goals. And I think we're all, you know, rightfully worried about, do we have adequate feedstocks? Are we going to have adequate distribution capabilities, et cetera? So we concluded that it's going to take some effort on our part to try to make this commercially viable. So we've, the Department of Energy brought us this idea. They've got a startup venture that has patented a process to turn corn stover into alcohol. And for those non-farmers like me out there, you know, what the hell's corn stover? Well, it's everything but the corn. So there's a lot of waste product, if you will. So I'm not an agricultural expert. Some of that needs to go back into the soil. Some of it can be removed. And now we're into the, you know, the nitty-gritty process of getting this startup off the ground, no pun intended, to figure out how you get that to a refinery, get it cooked, create the alcohol, and there's decent capacity to turn that into jet fuel. So that'll be a second step in the process. But we announced that back in June, and that's one example. I think there's a lot of corn stover out there, but you know, realistically, we're going to need feedstock sources from a variety of sources in order to have any hope of hitting a decent SAF goal. It's great for energy independence, certainly helps the climate, which I think is a very important goal that we all should share.
Gary, thank you. It's always an absolute pleasure to see you, and thank you very much for taking your time. I do know that Gary has an additional duty, so I'm actually going to leave Gary on stage, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you all.